Welcome back. I'm Mark, and this is On Set with Sawicki. Today joining us as our guest is Darren Heitner, sports lawyer, wonderful attorney, and close friend of mine. Darren's going to tell you a little bit about himself, the clients he represents, and how he works and how he helps with family law. So let's start with you, Darren. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Born and raised in South Florida, went to Nova High School and then to University of Florida for my undergrad and for my law school education. Moved right back down, thought I was going to be a sports agent. Actually started a sports agency when I was in law school. So I never really thought that I'd be practicing law. Instead, I thought that I'd be developing my sports agency thereafter and representing athletes in their team contracts. But after I found myself in a firm in Fort Lauderdale my first year out of law school, I decided I actually preferred practicing law over being a sports agent, for a variety of reasons that I won't get into today unless you ask me. So I dropped the sports agency and decided to convert a lot of individuals who would have been my competitors in the sports agency world and try to turn them into clientele. And one thing led to another. I worked at the original firm in Fort Lauderdale for a year, transitioned to a new firm, a startup in Miami, which was led by an individual with a lot of experience in entertainment law. He allowed me to develop a sports practice and also expand upon an entertainment practice that I was developing. And I started my own firm back in June 2014 and have focused on sports entertainment law, intellectual property, contracts, business law, and obviously, as you alluded to, we've developed a family law division and work very closely with you. So we envision ourselves as pretty much a full-service firm, not a big firm. You get a small firm feel, but better communication, I'd like to say, than with a big firm. And certainly, I'd hope that as good, if not better, results in going to a big firm.
Communication is something you mentioned I think is wonderful. You, of all people, I think are the most accessible person I've ever met to their clients. I have clients who will email you and maybe 10 seconds later you respond back. Communication, how is that and why is that important in your business?
It is vital to my particular practice. I think, first of all, whenever I'm talking to a potential client or a new client, I always like to manage the expectations. So the first thing that I'm going to let them know is you're going to get access to me from day one, but understand it's still a professional relationship and not a personal relationship. Now certainly it does develop oftentimes into a personal relationship, but with regard to communication, I let them know they can access me personally on my cell phone, calls, texts. They'll email me, I'll get back to them ASAP. I'm not a fan of the away from office email, even when I'm traveling, and I love to travel the world. I think you should enjoy as much as your personal life as much as your professional life. I think that gives you that opportunity, but at the same time, as somebody who owns my own firm, I think it's really important to have that personal touch. And again, because we are a small firm, it's a handful of us that are working on behalf of clients, so I want them to know that they can always count on me and that they'll get a quick response. And to be honest, that's one of the main reasons why I decided to start my own firm, is to give that type of real personal service to clientele that they oftentimes are not finding from other lawyers.
So being a sports lawyer, you find a lot of the individuals you deal with, a lot of your clientele, they're usually in a lot of deadlines or training camp or middle of games.
That's very true. I mean, a lot of the issues that we're confronted with are very time sensitive. So for instance, we work with a lot of various agents and agencies or financial planners in the sports world, accountants in the sports world, service providers that are dealing in the sports world. And so a lot of our clientele are basically referrals from those professionals. And oftentimes we're referred a particular athlete or entertainer who has an issue that is time sensitive, that needs action immediately. And so that's what's very key about having that open line of communication. First with the individual who's referring, and then with the actual individual or company that we're representing. A lot of these issues are very time sensitive, and so I think that's also something that sets us apart with regard to our communication.
So while we have a minute, why don't you tell us a little bit about your social media platforms?
I was early on social media. One of the first to join Facebook when I was in college when it was first opened up to the University of Florida students. And you may remember, at first Facebook was you could only join if you actually had a .edu email address. So I was very early on Facebook, which was the original big social media network. And back in my college days, I was a nightlife promoter, so I was gathering a lot of individuals as connections and using a social media platform to market. And so I had that early taste on what social media can do for a business. Obviously, there it was a nightlife promotion company, but I was then able to transition, an early adopter of Twitter, of Instagram, and so on and so forth, LinkedIn. I found that they're amazing platforms to brand yourself. And if you do it the right way, obviously you want some personality. It can't be completely dry. So you sprinkle it in here and there. But then you can really use those platforms, especially if you have a lot of followers, to show off your expertise. And especially as somebody who, I'd like to say I'm still young at 34, turning 35, but remember, when I was starting up my own firm 6 years ago, I was really young. And so in order to gain clientele and have them feel comfortable with me, getting that information out there, whether it be on social media or I used to write for Forbes, Inc. magazine, that was vital. Because if you think about it, I always like to put myself in the shoes of the consumer. If I'm shopping for a lawyer, what do I care about? Obviously, ultimately, it's comfort, right? And pricing and so on and so forth. But you have to feel comfortable with whomever you're hiring. And so I think that naturally there'd be some trepidation in hiring somebody who's in their 20s when I was starting at my own law firm. So again, I think social media and getting the word out and showing off my knowledge through that was vital to growth.
So you want to tell the audience what your social media handles or
Sure.
names are?
I think it's pretty dry. It's my name, at Darren Heitner on Twitter, on Instagram, I think on Facebook. So the hardest part is spelling it. It's Darren, last name Heitner.
Perfect. And so you and I have dealt with clients together. Do you have any advice for viewers or potential clients about social media when they're dealing with a family law case or any litigation case?
Absolutely. Social media can be an amazing tool for brand building. We do a lot of contracts for appearances, endorsements, signings, so on and so forth. And one of the main elements of these contracts is that there's some sort of component of a deliverable with regard to that person's social media. And it's not just followers, there's engagement metrics and so on and so forth that brands are looking at in today's day and age. And so developing a good social media platform can be huge for someone's income. At the same time, it can serve as a huge detriment. And I've dealt with clients who have benefited from their social media, and also some who should just throw away their phone. To be honest, it's
without naming names.
Right, and no names mentioned on this video podcast, but I've certainly dealt with individuals who use social media in the wrong way and don't want to hear or take advice on how they should be using it properly. And again, I think it's really important that an individual is authentic with his or her social media accounts. I'm not a big proponent of a lawyer or an agent taking over the social media account and removing the voice of the individual. But at the same time, not everything that you're thinking needs to be put on social media. So it's a difficult dance to appropriately manage an individual's social media account without taking too much control.
I remember you once told me that you are being pretty the forefront of esports.
Can you tell us a little bit about your esports background?
Sure. So
one thing that I've tried
to do in developing my own law firm is sort of
be ahead of
trends.
And one area that we
early on jumped on was fantasy sports. And we worked with a variety of fantasy sports companies
in developing
their businesses and working on their terms of service and privacy policy, intellectual property, and so on and so forth.
Essentially, we like to consider ourselves
as outside general counsel to a lot of companies. And so that's sort of the capacity that we found ourselves with fantasy sports. And then that led to sports gambling as well, as the doors have been opened up there. And as you mentioned, esports. Esports is taking something that I was very fond of growing up, playing video games. But here, we're not talking about just sitting at home and playing against your best friend. Now it's true big business, billions of dollars, whether it be with sponsorships, with events that are created, media rights, and so on and so forth. And the development of teams that are organizing some of the best names in the realm of esports and personalities that are growing. So there's a lot of issues to confront from a contractual standpoint, from an intellectual standpoint, intellectual property standpoint. We're starting to see a little bit more litigation in the space, which I think will present new opportunities for law firms. You know, it's sort of like any other industry when you're providing legal services, with the nuance that there's a particular type, you're dealing with a particular type of person and industry. And I think the person, more so than anything, a lot of these individuals are young, a lot of them are foreign, there's a lot of immigration related issues. And oftentimes if you can't speak their lingo, they don't really want to deal with you, even if you're a lawyer. So it helps having some sort of background, and I actually used to play video games pretty professionally. So,
Really? So
yeah.
what was
But
your
before you can make any money, NBA Jam was my thing. I actually
NBA.
got pretty far when I was young in a competition.
You ever heat up an NBA Jam?
I was on fire.
Who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl this year?
You know, you're putting me on the spot because I'm fortunate to have clients on both sides. But the most recent legal work that I did was for Quan Alexander of the 49ers. We filed a couple of trademarks last week or earlier this week. So I'm going to go 49ers.
Perfect. And I'm Mark Sawicki. This is Darren Heitner. We're on set with Sawicki, and we're here to protect your peace.